sea meets every shore. Not an if, but it's a when. From beginning to the end, I am fire in the rain. I've been through it all before.
With the current situation in the country, I think we need to be security to each other. So in case anything happens in your society and you feel it's not worth it, please call police immediately so that we don't get into the other saga of duka this side, the other side. Yeah, welcome to the life I live. My name is Susan Yawor, your new BC. Today I have a guest with me. He is a father, a leader. The rest is here to tell us. Hi. Welcome
Hi.
to the life I live.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan.
Maybe briefly tell us your names so we know who we have today with us.
Okay. First of all, very happy to be hosted on this program, The Life I Live. It's a pleasure being hosted here. I'm called Robert Nkwangu, and I use just my sign name. The deaf people refer to me that way. But I'm Robert Nkwangu, as I've said. I work here at the Uganda National Association of the Deaf as the Executive Director. And I also have other responsibilities that I hold. I'm a community leader, but I'm also very happy to be part of this program, and I know it's going to be an insightful program. Thank you.
Okay, we have Mr. Robert. Mr. Robert is going to take us through his childhood story. Let's start from, who was this Robert a child? Were you born like this? What happened? Maybe someone out there who's losing it might pick it from you.
Thank you, Susan. I'm deaf, as you can recognize. However, I wasn't born deaf. I was born hearing. But at about the age of 6, I remember I was about 6 years old. By then I was like in primary 3. I fell sick from malaria. And I also got mumps. I remember many years back, when that happened, I was given some medication. But I think my deafness was caused because of that medication. So after taking that medication, I gradually lost my hearing. But because I was able to speak then, I can lip read. Much as I may not be able to hear, I can lip read, and I can also utter some words if we have to communicate. I also want to use this program to let you know that we have about 4 categories of deaf people. We have those deaf people who are born totally deaf, and their mother tongue is sign language. So those are the ones that depend 100% on sign language. They're not going to be able to listen to anything or hear anyone or lip read. So that's the first category, the congenitally deaf. Then we also have that group that became deaf after learning a language. And you'll notice that those people can lip read, much as they may not be able to hear. That category is called the prelingually deaf. They also use sign language, and I think that's where I fall. That's where I fall. Then we also have the third group. We also have that other category where you're born hearing, and later on in life, you become deaf. Yeah, for maybe a number of reasons. So those are the postlingually deaf. Then the fourth category is the hard of hearing. Those may have a degree of hearing loss, and when you're audible enough, that person will be able to hear. And I think most of you have seen people wearing hearing aids. They benefit from such hearing aids. But for me, being that I totally lost my hearing, the hearing aid may not help. And one of the causes of deafness, I think, is the poor healthcare systems that we had in the past. you'll notice that when someone fell sick and if they're not given the right medication, say the person has suffered from mumps or meningitis, amongst other illnesses, if you don't give them adequate attention, they might end up becoming deaf. However, I accept being deaf, and I think I don't look really bad, but I want also to appreciate my parents because they tried their best to ensure that I was taken to hospital from I was hopped from one hospital to the other, trying to, look at possible ways of curing me. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible. And the doctors just advised her that I think I should be taken out of the country for a cochlear implant. But that we didn't second. So I accepted myself as a deaf person, and I accepted the disability, and this is how I've been since childhood. And I have a number of friends. I continued with my education as a deaf person. The teachers were able to understand my situation, and they gave me adequate support. So from the age of 6 till now, till the time I completed my education, I've been deaf. And I also want to use this opportunity to let you know that being deaf does not necessarily mean that you cannot study.
Okay, the life I live. Because if you believe in yourself and say, this is the life I'm going to live for the rest of myself, it's going to give you confidence. And this confidence that doesn't just come in from nowhere. It starts with you telling yourself, like he told himself, I have to accept the truth that I'm this. And I'm also looking good, like he said, it looks good. And if you didn't know that there are good people out there still, please, they are there. Let's look at the challenges. I want to know some of the challenges you went through as a child. Then maybe someone with the same challenge would get inspired that you went through and now you're out here speaking out for them.
Oh, that's right. The community perception on persons with disabilities has been a challenge. Not everyone understands disability. And there's been a lot of stigma amongst the community members. We are stigmatized as persons with disabilities. Some community members don't really understand disability to an extent. Some of them still have that perception that maybe someone became disabled because of a curse. Maybe the person was cursed or the family was cursed. And some of them don't put the value in you as a person with disability. Some of them think that you're useless, But that community attitude, that negative attitude within the community is one of the biggest challenges that I faced while growing up. And of course, the community here, we're talking about our family members, the schools in which we go, and the community at large in which we live. In the schools I attended while young, most of the children, I think I could say that children are lovely. I don't know, but for me, I think I had a very good relationship with the children while growing up, and they didn't really consider whether I was a person with a disability or not, because the child is always a child. We've played together, we've interacted together. And I think in a way they kind of appreciated my situation. But I think the challenge now goes back to the elders, because there are some myths that people believe in. And I think those myths are related directly to disability. And I think it's through such myths that stigmatization begins. We begin being stigmatized. However, again, I wouldn't really want to blame them because they may not be aware about all these issues. Some of them don't know. They don't know that they're stigmatizing someone. But because it's been a norm in the community, people have been seeing that happen in the community. They've taken it as, part of life. But I think what is important is sensitizing them to let them know what disability is and what the causes are. And I want also to use this opportunity to let you know that deaf people can, as I've said, go and attain education. They can go to school, they can gain employment, just like anyone else in the community. And that's the reason why, part of the reasons why the Uganda National Association of the Deaf was established. Because this is a national umbrella organization of deaf people. And the reason why we started it was to advocate for the rights of deaf people. And through this, we have a number of programs aiming at attitudinal change. For instance, sensitizing the community to ensure that they change their attitude. And you'll also notice that the government has incorporated most issues on deafness into the policies and laws that we have to improve or enhance service delivery in the areas of health, education, amongst others.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Robert. I think that explanation gets back to the society. If we just believe and give people the right to do, like he said, when he was a child, he had the right to play with other children. Leave your children play with the rest. Let it be normal. Like, let's stop putting in boundaries that my child shouldn't play with a child with a disability. So we get to know all of us are treated the same. Let's start with where we are seated right here. When did this whole thing start, and who was the brain behind this?
The Uganda National Association of the Deaf is an institution by and of deaf people themselves. So it's an association that was started by deaf people themselves, and it was started in 1973, way back. And I think we are now about 48 years old since we established, or since this organization was established. And of course, the reasons why this association was started was partly because of the challenges that deaf people were facing. So they thought that the deaf people would mobilize themselves and set up an association through which they would be able to advocate and sensitize the communities about their rights. And we now have a number of district associations of the deaf, and in almost all the districts that we have today, most of our deaf people have started community-based organizations, and these district associations of the deaf affiliate to the umbrella organization, and that's UNAD. And it's a membership organization whereby it's headed by the board of directors. Deaf people come together and vote their board of directors. And right now we have 11 members, and the 11 members comprise of, a regional balance. We have representatives from the north, the east, central, west, and special interest groups are also represented on the board, like the youth and the elderly. And we also look at Karamoja as a region that needs special attention. So we have a representative for the Karamoja sub-region. We also have staff members that do the day-to-day errands in the institution, guided by myself as the executive director. And we are affiliated as an institution to the World Federation of the Deaf, and that's the and the World Federation of the Deaf has a consultative status with the United Nations. So, as an institution, we've been able to run a number of activities through, of course, lobbying for support from our donors. We have a number of projects that are running to serve the needs of deaf people. We focus so much on sign language training. We carry out research and documentation on sign language. We do a lot of advocacy. We have economic empowerment programs. We also have programs related to education. We have gender-related programs. We have a host of programs that we believe can improve the livelihoods of deaf people in Uganda.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Robert. Looking at Corona itself being a situation we are going to live with, the deaf society is affected too. One day I hosted someone who told me something, and I want you to answer me this. This person told me, Suzanne, in this era, the deaf are being prisoned because they don't know what is going on. The deaf don't know that we have COVID and there is curfew, they're not supposed to move. And they're in prison, so we don't know who is responsible for fighting for their right to know that our people are brought into court and justice is being served. Maybe since this is a foundation for the deaf, you might have an answer for me.
That's right. You know, I think the main challenge goes back to inadequate or lack of communication amongst the parties involved. And, you know, COVID has had a number of SOPs and guidelines in place. However, I think the challenge we've had is that some of these SOPs have not been translated in sign language. So as information is being disseminated on TV, on radio, deaf people really can't access such information. So at the end of the day, you'll notice that they'll not give it the attention that it needs or deserves. 80% of deaf people are illiterate. 80% of our deaf community members are illiterate. And that ideally means that they've accepted their lives and that's how they lead their lives. And I think, of course, as you've said, some of them have been put behind bars because they've not been able to get the necessary information. And you know, when a deaf person is walking, sometimes, let's imagine a policeman tells the person to stop, but because the person doesn't hear, the person will continue moving, and at the end of the day, they just manhandle that person. I remember in the northern region, in Pade district, there's a deaf person who was actually moving at the time of the curfew at about 8 or 9 p.m. He was shot in the foot, and they ended up amputating his foot. His leg, I beg your pardon. They had to amputate him, but the reason why they shot him was because they called him, and since he couldn't hear, they thought that person was stubborn and trying to be big-headed. That's how they ended up shooting him. But I think, as I've said, the communication gap is one of the challenges. And the other thing is that I would urge whoever is in charge of disseminating information, not only about COVID, but generally, general information. It's important for you to translate such information in an accessible format. We, as the Uganda National Association of the Deaf, have the ability to offer such expertise.
Let me just go for a break, and when I come back, I want to get a solution that I and you and someone on UBC, we can see how we can advocate for people's rights, to see that these people are brought into court if it calls for that. For now, I'm going for a break, and when I come back, we shall start from there. Before I went for a break, I informed you that the three of us, him, me, and you, have to get a solution to the deaf society. We have to see how. Are we creating awareness? Do we need partners? Do we need the people fighting for the rights? What exactly do we need?
Thank you, Susan. Issues to do with access to justice is very paramount, and it's a big challenge that our deaf people are facing. As I want to inform you today, that of course, much as they are in there, some of them are also wrongdoers. We're not special. We're not special. There are other people who commit crime as deaf people. That one we appreciate. However, when we talk of access to justice, that's now where the main challenge comes in from. In most of our courts of law, you'll notice that they don't offer sign language interpretation services, even when these deaf people are being brought to court. But again, as I had said initially, that we need to have sign language interpreters into this public service structure. That's something that is very important, because without that, then you'll notice that maybe the courts of law may not be able to employ sign language interpreters. And if deaf people are put behind bars, how are they able to communicate with the people the other side? That's why we, as the Uganda National Association of the Deaf, try our best to train stakeholders like the police in sign language, but of course we train them in basic sign language communication skills. We also work closely with the prison warders and the team in prisons. We train them in sign language. We also carry out a lot of advocacy, and we have been urging the public sector, specifically the judiciary, to ensure that sign language interpreters are employed in courts of law. And in case, of course, anything happens where a deaf person has been convicted or arrested, expression of such people's interests is important. And gathering data or evidence is also a challenge. Look at a case in point where a deaf girl is either raped or defiled. The girl is deaf. She may not be able to express herself because ideally, there may be for a number of reasons. So now if that person cannot be able to express themselves, then they'll just say, they'll drop that case because they have failed to collect the evidence related to that case. And we as the Association of the Deaf, as I've said, we try our best to also empower deaf people themselves. We train them in sign language. We talk to them about their rights. They need to understand their human rights, because if they know their rights, then they'll be able to defend themselves. And if an opportunity surfaces, they'll be able to express themselves. And yeah, so that is one strategy that we use. But we also want to ensure that sign language interpreters are employed in the judiciary.
Okay, I think that has been explained, and it always tell you, if someone who has experience in something tells you that don't go for it or go for it, that's the best answer. Let's look at UNAD. UNAD is an organization for the deaf. What do you have for us that, let's see the project you have, then after the project you have for us, you tell us maybe let's start with the mission actually. Let's start with your mission. Let's start with your mission and we get to know, are you achieving it? Are you somewhere? Or you can sit and say, our mission is getting closely there.
Thank you very much. Actually, as you can see, our vision is a dignity for every deaf person. We want all the deaf people to lead the best quality of life possible, to enjoy their living, to ensure that they freely interact with members in their communities. And this can be achieved through our mission. And as you can see, our mission is advocating for the rights of deaf people through accessing sign language. And you know, sign language is key for deaf people to be able to communicate. It's the center of everything. At times, as we build the capacities of our deaf people, we use that to be able to build their capacities to defend themselves within the communities that they live in. However, we also talk to service providers. We sensitize service providers so that they are aware about the needs and issues related to deaf people. And we believe that, you know, we can't work alone. We will have to work in partnership with a number of stakeholders and organizations. We also look at the donors, both local and international, to ensure that they support our programs. And this is done through fundraising. So we, of course, try our best, but Uganda is really big as a country, and yet the resource envelope is limited. So we have now to begin identifying, you know, district by district that we can go to and at least train them. So we begin small and see how we can grow big. Yeah, that's what we do as an institution. Okay,
that is the institution part of it. I want to know the projects you have that are ongoing, because I've seen a number of people passing around, so I don't know. Are we at class? Are we training? What are we doing exactly?
Oh, thank you. We have a number of projects that are running. Some focus on ICT. We have a project on digitalizing sign language. We have a project on economic empowerment. This center here is a vocational training center where, of course, it has been certified and accredited by the government of the Republic of Uganda. And come January, deaf people will come back and continue with their studies. We train them in carpentry, knitting, and you can see the attire I'm putting on today. Deaf people did that for me. I got it from one of our students here. So we have carpentry, we have tailoring, we have knitting. We also have business skills development programs. And yeah, most of our students are certified by BitVet.
Okay, kindness. Kindness is the language that the deaf can hear. Just be kind. And the same kindness is the same language the blind can see. So you lose nothing to be kind to the deaf. You also lose nothing to be kind to anyone, anyone. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't treat someone if it was a vice versa, you would collapse. Because life here doesn't give you a second chance if you play with it. My name is Susan Awor, and here we believe I can, you can, we can. The life I live every Monday, 8:30 p.m. And our repeat runs every Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. Stay on UBC.
Like the sea meets